Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Insightful Accountant webinar, Measuring and Improving Your AP Process, presented by Liz Scott, sponsored by Tipalti. Insightful Accountant is an online news and information source written for small business advisors interested in the latest news and offerings in accounting technology. My name is Emily Hedrick, and I will be your webinar host. If you have any questions during the session, please enter them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to address them. Everyone that has registered will receive a follow-up email today with the handout and the webinar recording. Today's speaker is Liz Scott. In addition to serving as Insightful Accountant's contributing QuickBooks Online editor, Liz Scott is an advanced certified QuickBooks advisor and managing member of the Oklahoma City-based firm Accounting Lifeline, which specializes in QuickBooks training, setup, support, and integration services for small businesses. Liz is also a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network and writes course curriculum for the accounting community. She presents numerous live and webinar trainings across the US and abroad. Thank you, Liz, for being here with us today. And when you're ready, you can get started.
Thank you, Emily. That was nice to be introduced, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll go ahead and begin sharing my screen. And at this point, you should see my screen. Does it look good?
Yes, looks good, Liz.
All right, fabulous. Well, welcome everyone. As you may know, accounts payable is one of my favorite conversations. Why? Because there is so much room for improvement. So I feel like it's an opportunity to learn, explore, and then think about how can you improve for maybe not just your firm, but your clients' firms. And so many of my peers are taking care of the payables for their clients. So Emily introduced me. My little slide here goes, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that, but I want to go ahead and say thank you to our sponsor today. Our sponsor is Tipalti, and they are an end-to-end accounts payable software to automate the entire supplier payment operation. And they also make global mass B2B payments frictionless and effortless. And how are they able to do that? Well, they've really spent a lot of time thinking through the accounts payable process. And where I really want to begin today is talking about the AP challenges. Because they're so numerous, we have a lot of opportunities to dive in and explore where can we have some tactics for success, and where can we improve some of our workflows. And then we have a real treat today. So we have Nick, who's going to join us to do a demo. And I'm going to share with you some of the workflows and some of the things to point out and look at whenever you're analyzing the AP workflow. But Nick is really going to do a nice job of going through the demo. So I've got to see some of that, and it's wonderful. So make sure that you stay around and listen to Nick, because he's got some good tactics for improving your workflow. So if we think about where we need to begin, we've got to think about the inefficiencies in the payable process. And there's two things that you have to consider, and it's the people and it's the tasks. So if you have very, very capable people inside of your department, but they don't understand their duties, they're never going to be able to reach their full potential. And the opposite is true. If maybe you have some really great workflows in place, but your people are not clear about where they fit into that workflow, that's where you have these opportunities for inefficiencies. And if you're thinking about the ways that accounts payable departments have changed, you also know that if there's not a good streamlined solution, sometimes there's opportunities for fraud. Not always intentionally. Sometimes it's just a matter of there's a signature that's needed, and maybe they're going to rush that process. But anyway, things can happen, and so it's really important to first stop and think about some of these problems along the way. And one of the things that we can start with is the suppliers need to get paid. And this is where it can be really challenging, because multiple bills and pieces of paper can come in to an AP department in numerous ways. Possibly they are mailed in, and so there's actually somebody who is opening up that snail mail, or there's emails that are coming in and they're going straight to the purchaser, maybe not to the AP department. So there's a few things that can be changed and tweaked in order to increase the efficiency. Suppliers paid on time. You know, I'm a big believer in helping clients with cash flow. And one of the first areas that we can help clients with their cash flow is just creating bills. So being able to understand what bills are out there, what's their deadlines, and how much money do they need for each of those deadlines is going to help them to make sure that their suppliers are paid on time. It's going to help them to manage their cash flow. And sometimes if they pay early, they get some pretty substantial discounts. So clear workflows, clear communications leads to a lot of possibilities. The other thing that can happen is when you're scrambling, duplicates can happen. So like I was saying, some of those emails may be going to the wrong person with those bills. And what's then happening is they forward them over to the AP department, and then maybe the supplier says, hey, the bill hasn't been paid yet. And so sometimes they're using a P card to quickly pay that vendor bill because they want to stay in good standing. Well, the accounts payable department also has that payment scheduled. So you want to avoid duplicate payments. And the accounts payable department has taken on a wider role. And what I mean by that is businesses out there understand that there's all of this opportunity for improvement, but they don't know how to get there. And so they think that sometimes just adding more is going to be better, but that doesn't always result in that truth. So instead, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, yes, we're acknowledging that there's some ways to improve upon our AP processes, but we want to be very clear and strategic on how we implement those improvements. So when we think about the business as a whole, we understand that there's multiple things that are happening inside of that accounts payable workflow. And so each complication a business has, such as the volume of payables or the multiple departments, can add layers of difficulty. So if we start by thinking about the three major components, we can look at what I like to call the accounts payable life cycle. And so looking at these three components in a deep dive is something that we did several months ago. So if you want to go back through and you want to look at this really deep dive into each of these different components, the purchase orders, the received goods, and the payments issued, you can go back and you can see some of those terms that we use when we're talking about the AP life cycle. But for right now, I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that there really are three different life cycles, or three different components of the life cycle of the AP process. And so whenever we look at the workflow then, and we're considering the people and the tasks, we can start to create some clarity. And so we want to focus on these job descriptions. So creating job descriptions for each task helps you to manage time. And it's okay, and it's actually easiest if you start with sometimes just sticky notes. And you think about, I want everybody to write down what it is that they're doing. I want everybody to list out the tasks that they're spending their day doing. And you might find that there's some duplication there. So we want to use the existing resources that we have to their fullest ability. And whenever we think about the AP process and the inefficiencies with those people in the tasks, we also know that training is very important. So when we get the workflow that we really want, then we need to make sure that our people are caught up with what that workflow is. And I'm going to go ahead and say, Emily, can we launch our first poll for the day? Thank you. I'll give everyone just a minute to answer. Why are you attending today's webinar? I'm glad that you're here. And we're just curious a little bit about who you are. All right, well, I think I'm going to count us down. So make sure that you get the poll answered. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So we have some people saying that you're here to learn about the AP automation for your clients. All right, well, awesome. So that's exactly where we're going to be exploring today. So how can you improve the workflow for your clients and that whole process? So just a light touch on thinking about the job duties. Whenever we have a purchase order that is created, it's because we need goods or services. And so those contracts are going out into the world, and bids are sometimes created, and then contracts are accepted, and then that order is submitted. And so the next thing that happens is we want to make sure that we have in that purchase order some really good separations of duties. And whenever I was talking about fraud that can happen, sometimes it's just a simple thing such as favoritism to a vendor. So we want to make sure that we have a good way to submit our bids out there into the world, so that way we're very, very clear about, are we getting the best price from our vendors? The next thing that we think about is the receivables job duty. So once we've sent out that purchase order, now we're going to receive the goods. And then there's going to be hopefully some documentation that tells us that there's a back order. That, of course, needs to be communicated back to your payables department, so that way they know that they're not going to pay for items that have not been received yet. And then we also have maybe some items that need to be accepted into inventory. So there's lots of different components whenever we're thinking about the receivables, because the last step is making that bill. And so if we've got really good documentation, if we're really clear about the processes and making sure that we've got the goods or services received and documented these back orders, then we're going to be able to create a bill and know what items should be paid for. The next part is the payables job duty. And so the bill coding, this is a biggie whenever you're considering that you might have job tracking that you need to do. Maybe you've got PO matching. So you've got 2- and 3-way matching that can actually be quite challenging, but there are solutions out there to help you with that process. So if you are working with a client who just has a high volume of payables, but they don't so much have these 2- and 3-way matching, and they don't have as many POs, that's going to simplify your process. But maybe you just have a high volume and you need some help with creating a solution and workflow. But there's other people out there who really have very complicated payables processing, and so you need to make sure that everybody is clear on what their duties are and that they've got a very defined workflow. Matching the bills to the POs, so those various 2- and 3-way matching, some of those things can be automated. And so I'm going to talk about that just a little bit, but there's lots of opportunities to create some success and some tactics for being able to have internal controls. You also want to make sure that your vendors have a good experience. So whenever I'm thinking about reducing the bottlenecks, one of the things that I'm thinking about is, whenever you're going into a bottleneck, it's because there's a lot of things happening on one side of the bottle, and then you have to compact all of this activity or reduce the amount of flow that happens to get to the other side. And so I think of the things that are constraints in that bottleneck is going to be the people. So maybe you have the people who are entering the purchase orders, and then you have the people receiving the goods, and then you have the department that's actually going to be the one who's going to create those bills and ultimately the payments. If you've got systems in place, like a solution in place to be able to help you with that process, it's going to allow you to eliminate some of that waste. It's going to allow you to take on those wider range accounts payable department strategies that a lot of businesses are wanting to take. So, for example, this is a really nice workflow of somebody who is going to be the buyer. And then you've got maybe some approvers. So you've got your purchase order, and then you've got the people who are going to be approving those orders. And then you have the goods that have been received, and then you've got the bill. So where are you creating the bill? You can create that bill in multiple places if you've got a solution, but you want to make sure that you've got a bi-directional sync, so that way you're able to import all of those bills and activities into your payable solution. So that way the payment is recorded in not only your payable solution, but also inside of your QuickBooks. So for example, I really like this diagram. My brain thinks in diagrams, so I love it whenever I have a visual. But if you think about, here's where you're putting in your vendor details. So maybe you're putting it inside of your accounting solution. And then all of those vendor details are synced over into your payable solution like Tipalti. And then there you can actually start processing payments. The other thing can happen, you could actually enter your bills into your solution, and then that bill is then synced over into your accounting solution. So either way, you want to make sure that you're putting in your details and you have a really good sync. I like this diagram for exactly that reason. And I'm going to go ahead and say, Emily, if you can launch our next poll. We're going to be asking about the size of your clients that you're working with. And the reason that this is important is not only is it nice to know the number of employees that your clients have, but it also helps to create an idea of when there's multiple people involved, that's where it's really important to have good communication. And a solution like Tipalti, which we're going to be able to see a demo here in a little bit, is really designed for those clients who have quite a bit of volume and they need help with being able to streamline their processes. So Emily, I'm going to go ahead and count down this poll. Oh, thank you. Fabulous. So it looks like we're good. And a lot of you here, I would say the majority of you have the 11 to 50 range. So when we're thinking about the bill processes, the thing that I really think is quite important, especially not just today's world, but forever, is cash flow management. So being able to enter those terms, being able to have an approval process, reduce those bottlenecks, that actually is where you create the most opportunity for improvement. So making sure that your item list is visible, making sure that you've got your classes and locations and groups and categories. These are all things that might be important whenever you're entering your bill coding. And so all of these factors need to be documented in order to be able to ultimately create the reports that you're looking for. And so all things lead to good management decisions based on good reports. And I was talking about the PO matching, and this is where it's really important to make sure that you have, in a complicated scenario, a tool that's going to help you to be able to dive in and look at those automatic PO coding populations that can be assigned. And so expectations to reconciliation is going to highlight some mismatches and how to resolve it. So Tipalti's actually got built into it several different tools to be able to help with the PO matching if that's one of the needs that your clients has. So there's also a few ways that bills can be automated. And when we're looking for ways to improve workflow, I would say this is one of my favorite immediate ways to automatically get some increased productivity and accuracy. So you can automate the invoice collection. We've got the OCR scanning ability to be able to extract that data. And there's built-in intelligence that's going to be able to read those bills that are scanned. And this eliminates the need for manual data entry. And that also increases your accuracy. So advanced approval routing is also an option. So if you have a bill and it needs to be approved, you've got some options for automation there. And then you can even have some custom fields. I'm going to go ahead and just flip over here and show you that this is an example of the approval process with coding involved. So you could actually open up these lines, these details, and you can see we've got project, we've got location, we've got the items, and so we can even add in some descriptions. So you've got lots of ability to, inside the product, open up that bill that may have originally existed inside of your accounting solution. You're able to see those details here. And that would be probably my preferred workflow, is for you to enter maybe the bills directly into Tipalti and then be able to see them in your accounting solution. And then you can also do some improvement to your workflow by having vendor self-onboarding. Your vendors know their details. Your vendors know their addresses. They understand that they are going to get a W-9, a 1099 at the end of the year, so they need to put in their W-9 details. They are the best people really fitted to be able to put in these details. And so I would definitely recommend that you encourage vendors to enter in their own details. And one way that you can do that is by sending over an emailed link, or they can even do it on their phone. So these are both examples of what Tipalti has created as a workflow for you to automate this vendor onboarding. Another thing that you have to consider is, how do you want your vendors to get paid? And there are lots of different methods out there for payment. I would say the most common is going to be some type of e-check. And you can also do things like creating points where you can have the automation go out for the approvals. You can have these e-checks that are created, and this is actually going to reduce the risk of fraud. You can have the elimination of thinking about those check stamps. I still know businesses to this day that order check stamps, and they're so proud of, like, look what we have. And boy, isn't that an opportunity for fraud. There's even stamping machines. I used to work for a government agency, and that was a big thing that they had. And then also pre-signed blank checks. Oh my goodness, have I ever seen this inside of my clients' offices? So they'll open up a drawer and there are literally pre-signed checks in there. Getting away from that is going to open up the world of possibilities, because you're reducing those bottlenecks. You don't have to get the drawer that has the signed checks in there. Instead, you have this automated workflow that makes sure that every party that needs to be involved is able to participate and make sure that payments are sent out. Now, the other thing that you can have is batched payments. And so whenever I think about with my clients, I tell my clients that I want all of their bills entered in by Wednesday, all approvals to happen by Thursday. That way, everybody knows to be looking for their approval notifications on Thursday, and then payments are going to take place on Friday. So whenever you're batching payments, you can actually have multiple currencies. You can have multiple vendors that need to be paid. All of these various suppliers can be paid in one batch, and you can even have global payments. So whatever the currency is that they need to be paid in, you can actually create these batches on Fridays, and off your payments go. And this really takes us back to, if you know that you're going to want to create that batch for Friday for all of your payables, well, then you can make sure that everybody has approved all of the steps along the way. Any person that needs to be involved with paying the bills, your payees. And so adding even a new vendor is quite easy, and a new payable staffer is pretty easy. Because again, reporting is where we all want to get to, really good quality reporting. So if we're thinking about how do you take all of those batched payments and make sure that you're able to reconcile them, it's with reports. So we all love our Excel. I'm still a big Excel user. And so you can actually download these and you can see them in a CSV file and be able to confirm, here's where those payments went out, here was the batch, here's the payee ID, and you can see that it's easier to reconcile with using a tool that is designed for high volume payables. So again, here's just another visual because I love my visuals to be able to say, all right, where do you enter the details? You put the details in either your accounting solution or inside of your payable solution. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to put in your bill, and then that's going to be synced to your accounting solution. And this is one of those opportunities where I say, our clients see those invoices in their hand and they say, hey, I've got invoices that need to be submitted. Well, it's really good practice to repeat to them, this is a vendor bill, and go through that verbiage a couple of times with them. You don't actually just have to correct them, but I would make sure that they get kind of used to some of that terminology with the bills. And then that way, when you're talking about bill payments, everybody's on the same page. I'm a huge QuickBooks user, so of course this one makes me very happy because I can see where do I put in my vendor information, and then once the vendor information is entered, then I can put in my bill into my accounts payable solution, and then I can use that OCR ability. I can do any type of coding and scanning, and then approvals, and then that payment is actually going to be processed inside of my solution and then pushed over into QuickBooks. So I've got a really clean process here. So I'm going to say at this point, can you go ahead and launch our third poll? And while you're doing that, the launch of this last poll, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we are going to be lucky enough to have a live demo from Nick. So do you have an AP automation solution in place? And really, this is a question for both you and your clients or just your clients. All right, I'm going to go ahead and count that down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And so some of you, the majority of you, say not at this time. Well, I'm glad that you're here. And I'm really glad to have Nick here because he's going to take us through the accounts payable with Tipalti and using that solution. Nick, do you want to say hi?
For sure. Hi, everyone. As the slide shares here, my name is Nick Cordino. I'm coming to you from Toronto, Canada, so a little bit up north here in Canada. My experience with Tipalti started 3 years ago when I actually was at a high growth startup in Toronto. It's called Top Hat, and we actually had to solve for a payables solution. So many of the pains that Liz, you just spoke about, having the constraint of high volume of invoices and no time and people resources to code them all properly, and really experiencing downstream issues is something that's, common across multiple companies, common to me, and what I use Tipalti to solve for personally. So it's very interesting now that 3 years down the road, I've joined Tipalti as a solution consultant. So my goal now is to empower others in similar situations on how they can utilize our platform to just unleash the potential of their AP team, to be more strategic, to scale with their companies growing. So.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me just share my screen here for a second. And can you guys see the wheel here, Liz? Can you just confirm that?
Yes, looks great.
Perfect. So we start our presentations as I show the solution to prospects or customers and partners all the time with this wheel slide. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, to show the holistic platform that Tipalti is and the different facets of the AP journey that we solve for. So, Liz, you did a great job touching upon the different pain points. Many people, when they think of AP, they think of the last step of payments or funds switching hands from yourself to your vendor. And really the symptom of AP related issues is often, issues with payments, paying the wrong vendor, duplicate payments. So what we try and do here, and why I also like to share this slide, is because we solve beginning at the 12 o'clock with our platform. So the start of the journey is actually with supplier management, as you mentioned. And through our platform, we have a white labeled platform where, you're really just transitioning all the work, the legwork away from your finance team to a self-service portal that your vendors need to fill out. So as you mentioned, they know their information best. They know, their address information, within the US, they know that they'll need to fill out a W-9 form in order to receive a 1099 at the end of the year. So it's nothing new to them. But what we try and do and why we leverage this portal, the hypothesis here is to alleviate downstream related payment issues. And, we've seen in some cases up to a 60% reduction in failed payments, in duplicate payments across our customers. So again, the impetus there is all related to, what could be costly mistakes, right? Investigating what went wrong takes the most time away from your AP team to rectify, when you've paid a wrong vendor or paid someone incorrectly, you have to remedy that. But also, if you think of your supply chain, and specifically now with the growth of the gig economy, paying out influencers, right? If you mess up a payment to an influencer, that could result in a lot of social media backlash, and it's just unnecessary, headaches for your AP team, and more so even for your company. We'll then go into invoice processing. As you mentioned, Tipalti can solve for a host of different workflows, PO invoices that are backed by PO or just invoice back spend. We utilize different pieces of technology, OCR technology. We actually have a managed services team, which is a set of human eyes that are reviewing the invoices for you and ensuring that there's no transposition mistakes. We complement that with our machine learning technology to provide predictive coding sequences, both on GL coding. You mentioned class and location, which could be, configured additional custom fields. And as well, we want to automate and enhance the controls related to the approval process. And then lastly here, just at the bottom, we'll actually get in today to creating a payment batch. And what I want you guys to think here is, how can I live in a world where I have to log into different payment solutions, dependent on payment methods sometimes. So, often some people are writing checks out of their ERP and logging into a banking portal to issue a wire or an ACH. Couple that as you grow globally, you're logging into several different banking platforms dependent on currency. So really what we try and do here is leverage Tipalti's banking relationships so that within one platform, regardless of payment method, regardless of currency and where you're sending money globally, we would take that headache away from you. And then all of this stems from building and being positioned in platform to support multi-entity structures, right? We want to enhance financial controls. We want to use artificial intelligence and being a cloud platform to really harness the value of eliminating the manual parts of the journey. So without harping on that too much, I do want to log into Tipalti. When I log in here, I'm going to be brought to what we call the AP Hub. And so let's give us a little second to log in here. You're going to see once we log in, all the different modules up at the top. So everything from payments, bills, managing your payees, and even the reporting functionality that you mentioned, those are all configured up at the top here. But today we're going to be playing around we're going to be joining the EverSky finance team. So the company we're joining today is EverSky. When you log into the platform, first you see the payment module. I guess the impetus here is cash is always king, but also treasury is important. We want to see which payment batches are completed, which ones are in process, and who I need to chase down in order to approve any remaining batches. But let's start with the vendor onboarding sequence and the flow here. In order to add a new vendor to Tipalti, you're going to need to establish a payee ID. Once you do so at the beginning, though, we can simply autofill this. Because we are a cloud-based platform, we will need to add an email. And the email is where this invite will go out to, but the communication doesn't stop there. Anytime an invoice is processed, anytime a payment is processed, your payees or your vendors will get that automatic notification. So that it alleviates your team and finance teams and AP teams from even having that correspondence with their vendors. It's proactive, it's ahead of time. They have much more visibility into the cycle than ever before. And then we do support a multi-entity structure. So if you do have multiple subsidiaries, you can choose a preferred one. Our platform is also available in over 17 languages globally. Like that, we can correspond to a global market. So people and vendors around the world can log in without issues. So what we're going to do here is click invite to the suppliers portal. When I do that, that kicks off this welcome email. Again, we want to ensure that your logo or your customer's logo would be present here. So it looks and feels exactly like it's coming from them. The important part here is this tokenized link. So you would be able to customize the wording, make it look and feel as if it came from you directly. But really what's important here is that link, and it's tokenized to prevent unauthorized access. So this email can't be forwarded to another one, and the link cannot be accessed from there. But once I click in here, I'll be prompted to log into our supplier portal, where again, you're going to see your logo multiple times throughout this process. We want to establish that this is your relationship with your vendor and not that this is a phishing attempt to collect payment related information. So as we log in here, the onboarding process consists of 3 different steps: address information, payment method, and tax forms. With the address information we're collecting, we're doing 2 things with that. The first, we're doing an OFAC screening, and we're also screening against different sanction lists and watch lists globally. Because as a licensed money transmitter, Tipalti can't actually process transactions on your behalf to anyone that's on those lists. The second thing, we're using the country to identify the list of available payment methods that they would be able to select from on the next page. And I do want to just switch this here 1 second. It's a shared environment, so my colleagues are likely running a different demo, but I want to switch this here for us to be in the US. And so when I move forward now to payment method, domestically in the US, we offer 4 different types: the direct deposit ACH, a wire transfer, check, and PayPal. Globally, we also offer in around 60 different countries now, a local or an international bank transfer. And it's a cost-effective alternative to a wire transfer, just to enable, we use our global banking partners and their actual local rails in order to offer that alternative, just so we're not processing super expensive wires every time we need to make a payment internationally. And secondly, the last payment method in the Eurozone is a prepaid debit card. You'll notice here as I toggle between the forms are dynamic. So dependent on the payment method and where they're located, I might need different information in order to execute that payment. Again, it's another area where the headache is removed from your finance team or your payables team, because especially as you grow globally, you might need an IFSC code in order to process a wire to India. Most domestic accounting teams might not know that. And rather than researching, what you need to process that wire, you can just leverage Tipalti's built-in relationships, built-in methodology and platform in order to do so. Another quick thing to mention, as I'm filling out information here, we have over 26,000 validation rules that are working real time. And so as I'm filling out information, some of these could be syntax. So just, ensuring that account numbers are 9 or 12 digits. But in this particular case here, this is validated that this in fact is not a valid routing code. So I do have, butterfingers, chubby fingers, fat fingers, whatever you want to call them. I've made a simple transposition mistake at the very end here. Instead of a 7, it should be an 8. And now this is actually a Bank of America routing code for the western part of the US. But real time, we're validating the information that's submitted, again, with the impetus to alleviate downstream payment issues. And going forward now, I'm just going to select hold my payment so I can get to the tax form. Here we partnered with KPMG to digitize tax form collection. There's a couple unique features. So we can start a tax questionnaire. So if you are onboarding individuals that don't know which form they need to fill out, there's a 5-step process that at the end here, they'd be prompted with a form to fill out. However, what I want to show you today is just that W-9 form. It's most common. And again, this looks and feels exactly like a regular W-9 form. The only difference is we're collecting the information digitally. And so why is that important? Well, we're able to report then at year end, a 1099 validation report where we can, or a preparation report, I should say, where we present to you all the payments that we've processed aggregated by TIN number, so that you have all the information aggregated together so you can file your 1099 forms with the IRS. The second unique feature here is the TIN validation. So what we can do here nightly, we have a window with the IRS where we do a bulk TIN validation. And so we're actually ensuring that the individual's name filled in up top matches either the SSN or the EIN that the IRS has on record. And then lastly here, fulfilling in the need for a legal digitally binding signature, we do collect that on your behalf so that you avoid any potential B notices or fines from the IRS. Once payees go through this 3-step process, they would be deemed payable into Palti. And so they'd have access to this portal more so as a maintenance basis going forward. So if they did change their payment method, they can come back here and change that themselves. Again, they don't need to ask your finance team. They don't need to, you will get notified, but you don't need to make that change yourself. But they're able to see payment information. So they can see the status, if something was paid, submitted, or deferred, and then they can go in one step further and see why it was deferred. In this case here, Eversky tried to pay this vendor, but their tax form wasn't submitted. So we didn't have a W-9 form. And again, the goal here is just to drive adoption to the platform. So, they're still going to get that notification through email. Eversky did try to pay you. Please log in, update your tax form so we can release this payment. And then in addition here, they can see their invoice history. What's in process? Has it been submitted for payment or has it been approved? The very last step here is how to submit an invoice. So we can receive invoices in our platform 2 ways. The first is through uploading it directly in the portal through one of these supported formats. And secondly, and what is most common, is the creation of a centralized inbox. And what this allows is for scalability within the finance department. I remember when I first joined my startup, I was constantly, there was turnover in our department, and we've later found out that many invoices were sitting in an individual's direct inbox rather than our centralized finance inbox. So building that routine and process within not only our platform, but maybe using adoption to Tipalti to drive that change management or drive that change is an option for you or your customers. And again, Tipalti would sit on top of this inbox, and that's where we would begin downloading the invoices and working on them. So again, this, to be clear, is the supplier hub. This is what your customers' vendors would be looking at as they fill out their onboarding process. But now we're going to go back into Tipalti. We're actually going to try and code a bill here together. So within the bill module, I should have said before, and I don't remember if I did, but the goal using all of our technology that's built into the platform, the approval workflow, and the coding sequences is one goal: to decrease the amount of time it takes from an invoice being received to when it's pending payment, so fully approved. You can then extend that to decreasing the time it takes for that to be fully paid. But as we get in here, we do see different steps. Invoices that are pending review. As a high frequency user, I can see what's pending my approval. Anything that's sent back to AP through the review process would be pending AP action. And then everything that has been approved and is waiting to be grouped into a payment batch would be pending payment. But today we're going to start coding one specific invoice. A couple more things before we get in there. In a multi-entity structure, we support all entities. So you'd be able to see invoices across all of them in all different currencies. And you do see here a little bit of the reporting information. So invoice date or due date. And you can add different filters. So if I only want to focus on one particular entity or to segregate out that workflow, I can. But today we're going to start with one particular invoice. As I click in here, Tipalti's magic has been worked on this invoice. So we're going to see here, we do pull down an actual invoice image, and our OCR and managed services team are bringing over all of the areas of an invoice that don't require judgment. And I like to use judgment as a differentiation here because, we do use machine learning, but machine learning learns on how something has been previously coded. So using our machine learning technology, that's what will populate the expense account, the project, and the department. We talked about additional granular levels of reporting that's captured on the bill lines. Whatever you have configured in your ERP, we can add those custom fields here as well. But again, OCR and managed services are bringing over at the header level the invoice number, the date, the due date. At the line item level, it's description, quantity, unit price, that net amount. And then our machine learning algorithm, which is called Tipalti Pi for payment intelligence, that's what's picking up the rest. So the last time this CloudCom invoice came in, where the description was licenses, it was coded to advertising and marketing. And so it will pick up and predetermine a set of coding sequences so that the role of AP is now no longer, transpositioning the description, toggling down an expense account or anything like that, but it's now a review step. So rather than inputting, it's review and verification, which takes dramatically less time. The second part of our machine learning technology is with respect to the approval sequence. So it's going to look at the vendor and who approved it last time, dependent on certain custom fields. So maybe Erica is the marketing department head. So the last time this invoice came through, because it was a marketing invoice, it went to her for approval first. And so we can see here that we can change the approval sequence. So I can move over really easily any sequencing here. I can add a new bill approver very easily. So Liz, I'm going to use you as an example today. Liz, remember we joined the EverSky finance team. And then I can add an approval limit. I can also assign a manager. So if you're out of office for 2 weeks on vacation, I can set this as a path of escalation so that, upon not hearing back from you, this bill would automatically route to your manager for approval. As an AP team, once I'm happy with how this is coding or how it was coded and it would be routed for approval, I would just submit this for approval. After doing that, that kicks off an email chain that looks like this. Again, your logo would be up top. All of the bill header and bill line item details would be prevalent. You would see a trend analysis of the last invoices. Again, to enhance the dialogue between the bill approver and the finance team. So, you can see, we've been invoiced. In this particular example, it's not a great example, but when this last invoice came in at $10,000, that could potentially raise red flags. Okay, well, AP team, were we behind in receiving invoices? Were they late in billing us? Are we prepaying for 2 months now? So it just enhances a little bit of dialogue between the reviewer and the AP team. They also see an image that's attached here, and they can see where they are in the approval sequence, who approved it before them, and who is set to approve it after them, if anyone. And then there's 4 call to actions. So directly from this email, I can approve it, I can update coding, I can send it back to AP, and I can dispute that bill. Again, as a high frequency user, and as this is mentioned here, if I have to approve multiple bills, I can do so directly in the platform in the Pending My Approval tab. And so I can select all. I can also drill into the detail here and see the specific invoice, see the invoice copy, see how it was proposed to be coded, see who's in the approval sequence. And then at the bottom here, again, I can approve it, I can send it back to AP, or I can dispute this with the vendor. As we work through the process, my AP team would be resolving these invoices that are sent back for review. So again, in order to send it back, we need a comment from the reviewer. So again, updating the project code. I can quickly come down here, update that project code, and send it back for approval. The goal, though, is to get everything in this pending payment status. And with our direct integrations that we have with certain ERPs, this is the point in which we recommend those bills syncing over into the ERP as an open bill. But I'm able to see here a lot of detail on that fully approved bill. I can see, again, the image, see the header information, see who has approved it, see how it was coded. And then a unique feature, I can also see the bill audit. So see the dates and times in which this was sent for approval and who actually approved it. Couple more minutes here. I just want to show you a couple more things. So now all of these bills are pending payment, meaning my AP approval workflow is complete. Now what I can do is I can create a payment batch. And in just a few clicks, if I wanted to select all that were fully approved and I'm doing weekly payment runs, I could do so. If I want to focus again on certain entities, I can filter for certain entities, but I have the choice here. Sorry. I get to select who I want to pay. In this case, I'm going to pay all 3. And I'm just going to hit pay bills, and I get a choice on when this payment would be released, either on the cycle date, so which means on the bill due date, or if I'm late on paying an invoice, I can select a specific day for these to be paid out. I would just hit prepare payments. When I do so, that creates a payment batch that we saw on this first page. And what I can see here is another set of approvals. The difference here is these are concurrent approvals. So amongst your payment approvers, or who you designate the ability to approve payment batches, you can also then set a rule that the batch would be approved after a certain number of approvals were received. For example, you can have 3 different payment approvers, and each batch would be approved after 2 approvers were received. But again, it's at the batch level. So what I can do, though, and quick things to note, this payment batch covers a whole host of different currencies, from Australian dollars to US dollars. Israeli shekels, pounds, euros, Canadian dollars, Brazilian real. So again, I'm not logging into different banking portals to accomplish this. I can also see here a variety of different payment methods, everything from PayPal, wire transfer, e-check, and check. So again, you're globalizing your operational flow in order to streamline that process. Quick things here on review. I can go into these individual payments, and if I wanted to, if I found out that there was an issue with this invoice, potentially it was for inventory that was faulty, as an AP team with permissions, I can cancel this payment while still having the approvers approve the remainder of the payments. So again, it's not sending that batch back to your AP team, removing it, submitting it again. It's a real-time cancellation of that one bill. It would show up here in canceled payments, and then I would approve it. How we fund the accounts. And this is the very last step in the payment journey. Essentially, what we're doing is we're aggregating and compartmentalizing the payment flow outside of your regular operating account. And there's a couple of different benefits for that, but the main one is by separating out this flow, the bank reconciliation now becomes a lot easier. Both in your operating account, you would only have your remainder transactions, but in these accounts here, which are FBO accounts for the benefit of owner, essentially they're clearing accounts. So you would only fund in the amount for us to execute your payment batch. And then as we post each and every one of those bill payments, those are going to itemize or be credited out in an itemized fashion one by one. So that at times of month end, essentially reconciling is very easy. You just have your funding in to fund the account, less every payment that's gone out, and that would be your resting balance from a month end perspective. Just to show very quickly, because I know we're inching closer to time, the range of reporting that's allowed. I can pull payment records. I can pull a payee list to see who's payable and unpayable. And the big one here is the bill details report. This allows, full visibility into all bills that are within the system, what stage they are within the system. And lastly, here at the bottom is that 1099 prep report. So thank you very much. I know there were a couple of questions that came through, but Liz, I can hand it back to you for a little bit more dialogue.
Nick, this is great. Thank you so much for giving us a really nice deep dive, and quickly,
Yeah.
but a really nice deep dive into a lot of the features. Oh, go ahead and share your screen, because
Oh, sure.
I love seeing it in action. And it's one thing to talk about all of these improvements that you can make, but it's another thing to actually see it in action. So if you'll take us back over to, oh, sure, even payments is great. So
Sure.
if you're looking at upcoming payments, this is your payment history, but if you wanted to see payments that are coming up soon.
Yeah, so great, actually a great segue here. So this is how I would approve it, right? But these could have different due dates, right? They could be September, in this case, they're all old, but they could be future dated, right? So this funds required tab here is what actually projects forward what you would need from a cash flow basis in order to fund all those payments that were approved. And it takes a little bit of a second to load, but essentially here in US dollars, I'm able to see, I have $201,000 of payments that have been approved. They're scheduled to go out, today. In order to fund that and have that clear, I need to fund this 192,000 here in order for those to clear out. But it goes essentially on a week by week basis, what I would need to fund in order to execute all those approved payments.
That's fabulous. That's really, really helpful for being able to forecast, do you have enough adequate funding?
100% cash flow management is crucial, especially now through COVID, right? Everyone is trying to just be on top of what's been approved. A lot more payments are being scrutinized, but for sure.
I agree. And I feel like this has became an opportunity adventure. So I feel like people are really looking for tools like this to put in their tool belt to be able to say, I wanted to try this before, but I really wasn't sure. And now they're actually diving into some of these available solutions to really clean up and create a streamlined solution, because so many teams are virtual 100% now.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I shared, in March when all this was going crazy, I had a call with my CSM at Tipalti, and, my CFO actually came to me and was so thankful. Even processing checks, right? Tipalti takes care of that for you. You're not signing them individually. Tipalti's posting them, they're being sent out. So we were able to, transition to an online virtual world, very, very easily, and because we had the system in place well before that. So.
Well, I think that the other thing that you showed was that white label branding that goes out that allows your vendors to onboard themselves. And so this is really key right here. It's a nice invite.
Yeah, I think the premise, and even as a customer, right, we wanted to alleviate the concern that, there would be an intermediary party that's interacting with them. We want the relationship to be between, our customers and their vendors. So as much as possible, we want to include your branding. We want to give you control of the look and feel and the wording. All the way through to the supplier's portal, your logo would be on every page of this, right? So.
Fabulous. I think that's fantastic. Payment details, of course, I'm a big fan of being able to see what payments were sent. So payment history.
I'm sorry, I timed out, but let me log back in quickly.
No worries. I think that you're giving us a really good opportunity to look at the platform, be able to play and be safe. But the other thing that I would say here is that you have some resources for people to go and look at if they wanted to have more information. And then I would also say that they should reach out directly and get a demo one-on-one and ask some of these questions.
100%. I would be more than happy to. I know we'll be sending out a little bit more information to all the attendees as well, but I would be happy now that, I've pivoted my career to run demos and empower teams to unleash their potential. I'd be happy to help out where I can.
And what a smart move. It makes it really, really easy whenever you're able to talk to somebody who understands your language and understands the pain points that so many of us have with our clients whenever we're talking about AP. So great, great addition to the team.
I always say, don't be afraid to ask technical, revenue recognition, whatever it is. I understand it. So feel free to ask away.
Okay. Well,
Awesome.
no, that just makes it challenging. Well, and
Awesome.
the other thing that you said that, of course, I just had to laugh. I'm glad I was on mute. Was you said Chipotle pie. So
yeah. Well, even the logo is the pie symbol. So we didn't help
fabulous.
ourselves there. But yes, Chipotle pie, payment intelligence.
Well, whenever you think about it, you go, okay, so we know this is happening in the background, AI and machine learning, but how is it actually being used? So you gave a really nice presentation about how is Chipotle actually using these new abilities. So fabulous, fabulous.
Awesome.
Yep, I appreciate it. And being able to go scroll through there and see those individual breakdowns of lines. I know that for a lot of businesses, this is very key to whether or not they can use a solution because, I'm a big fan of making sure that you've got great workflows in place, but a lot of solutions come with a workflow and you need to make sure that that aligns with your internal workflow. And this just being able to put in all of our line details and in any project and department coding that's necessary is really, really key for a lot of businesses. So thank you for showing that.
Of course, no problem.
Well, I think what I'm going to do at this point is I might go ahead and share my screen for just a second. And that way I can give a little bit more information before we sign off for today. And it looks like I've got screen sharing. So we had a really nice presentation going through Chipotle and all of the various features and components that are available. And whenever we think about the accounts payable solution as a whole, now we kind of have an idea of where can you implement some solutions so that way you can better improve your own internal processes. And it's exactly like what Nick was saying. You have Chipotle pie to make it smarter for you. And, not only do you have these abilities to actually create this streamlined process, but you actually have the opportunity to make this really heavy volume worth of work really feel actually manageable. And so having some great strategy allows you to be successful. So it was wonderful to be able to see all of those details in action. And I will say thank you to everyone for joining us. My name is Liz Scott. Here's my email address if you'd like to reach out for more information. And then also, Tapalti would like you to also have their contact information to reach out to them with any further questions that you might have. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you, Nick, both of you for being here with us. There was a great presentation and a great demo. Everyone, thank you for joining us today. I will get you the webinar recording and handout here shortly, and I'll also send along that contact information. Again, thank you all so much, and we hope to see you at the next Insightful Accountant webinar. Everyone have a good day.